Much. So let me start again. I am sharing my screen. Everyone can see my screen, right? And this is today's agenda. So I wanted to welcome everybody on this call. So we have participants from the 3 UN co-conveners, from the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub, from UNV Asia Pacific, hopefully Emilia is there, and from our colleagues also from the SDG Action Campaign, located in Bonn, Germany. So today's agenda will be quite simple. We have waited now that the people have connected. So thank you for that. We will do a very brief presentation about the My World 2030 Asia Pacific program. I'm going to tell you about the objectives, the timelines, and some of the tools and trainings that we have upcoming. I will then do a very brief presentation and overview of the work UNDP is doing globally and in the region, telling you more about how we work on the effective implementation of the SDGs. And then we will turn to our colleagues from the UN SDG Action Campaign. Laura is here with us, and she will present the UN SDG Action Campaign's mandate and the kind of work they're doing, the type of partners they have, and so on. And then we will turn to Emilia to present about UNV, UN volunteers, and in particular give us some examples from Asia Pacific and promote the promotion they're doing on the positive role of volunteers in the UN system and in society in general. What I would like to remind you is to please keep yourself unmuted. I know now for now you can't speak, but please use the chat function if you have any questions, and we will try to address them at the end. So we will not today take questions along the way because there are too many of you and we will probably be interrupted all the time, but there will be many opportunities for us to really engage more actively, more proactively. So don't worry about that. So thank you again for joining. Let me see if this is the next slide. So I wanted to give you a bit of a background about the My World survey and the My World initiative. In fact, it is our colleagues from the UN SDG Action Campaign who should be presenting this slide because they are the ones managing, they're the ones who designed and are implementing the My World survey globally. So this is a survey that started actually, was designed in 2012, right before the SDGs were designed and agreed upon by 196 member states. And basically what happened is there was a My World 2015 before this version, and it collected about 10 million votes in 194 countries, and it really helped shape the SDGs as we know them today. One example is how SDG 16 on peace, justice, human rights was not really on people's radar, on development practitioners, on government, and thanks to the My World survey, My World 2015, it really helped us bring them into the SDGs. So this is just one example. In the guidebook that we shared with you, we give you about 3 pages of background about the SDGs, where they came from, the My World. I would highly recommend you that you read the guidebook very carefully, and especially the introduction part, which will give you a lot of background. So in 2015, after the success of My World 2015, there was a realization that we need to keeping track about the SDGs. So the basic point is, what are people's priorities on sustainable development, and what is the perception on progress? So is it going better, is it going worse, or is it staying the same? So the My World 2030 is collecting data and will do so at least until 2030, and it's very important that we get as many votes as possible. On this version, globally right now, there are about 450,000 votes. And about a year and a half ago, with Laura, with Gayan, with Hani, with UNV as well, there was a bit of a realization that in Asia Pacific, maybe the vote collection wasn't very high. The numbers were not very good. Some countries really had extremely low numbers. And in the region of the world where you have the biggest population, with countries like India, China, Indonesia, and so on, it was quite weird, quite nonsensical that we did not have enough data. So there was we decided about a year and a half ago to come together and design a program that will help us collect votes. So the survey is the center of the program. The program is called My World 2030 advocacy program. So it's centered around the survey, but the survey is just a tool. This is so much more than just a survey. This is an SDG advocacy program, and I will explain to you how in a bit. So if you have not voted yet, please go to the myworld2030 .org website and do take the survey yourself. It is 4 basic questions that are quite easy to answer. There will be a dedicated webinar by Gayan next week sometimes, where you can learn more about the platforms, how the survey platform works, and how you can collect data. How does it work to collect a vote online and offline? If your language is not there, how to add your own language. We currently have all the languages in ASEAN countries, in the 10 ASEAN countries. So we have, English, of course, but we also have Chinese, Filipino, Tagalog, and so on, in Lao and Khmer and so on. And there are a lot of versions of the survey, a lot of languages, including Hindi and Bengali and so on, that need to be added. So we will need your help. So 3 steps, very simple. These are all the 10 languages I mentioned. That's how you click in the top right corner. And the program objectives are quite, easy. They are basically centered on like 3 principles. Really trying to raise awareness on the SDGs, on sustainable development, and mobilizing local and grassroots communities. So one realization that we had is that it was, despite all the programs, the extensive programs we have in the region, in Asia Pacific, UNDP and UNV, there are some places where we cannot reach, where we simply don't have the manpower and the capacity to reach. And so we decided to really wanted to use the MyWorld survey to do that as a tool, as a vehicle. The second point is about accountability, trying to really strengthen civic participation, help people develop skills to create accountability lines between citizens and their government representatives. So that is a very central point of the MyWorld 2030 survey. You can use it as an accountability tool to really collect data and evidence and then bring them to your government officials and say something along the lines of, look, it's not just me that think that water management is important in my community. It is me and 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 people in this city that believe that as well. So a lot of NGOs, thousands of NGOs are partners of the MyWorld survey, and they have been using the MyWorld survey to create this accountability, collect this data, and go to their governments to hold them to account. The third principle of this program is really about action. So it can be offline or online. Some of the advocates here today are field advocates, others are online advocates. I will explain the difference in a minute. And really the whole point of this is really for you to distill, instigate, facilitate, promote, encourage action. People to act on what they believe for. So it's not really about the SDGs as logos, as colorful logos as they are, but it's about really what's important for people. Access to education, good infrastructure, good healthcare. There's all of these very basic needs that everyone has, and that's what the SDGs are really. It's about people's lives. It's not about government or development practitioners' data or indicators. It's about people's lives. So really trying to motivate people around you to take action for the SDGs. That's really what the program is about. The Advocates program was launched already a year ago. We had initially participants from the 10 ASEAN countries. So these include Vietnam, Laos, Singapore, Malaysia, and so on. And just recently, because it was so successful, we decided for this phase to also extend it to many more countries. So we now have representatives from India, from China, from Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and we are also from the Pacific, very importantly from Fiji. So we are very happy now that we are really expanding in this region. So up to last week, we only had 100 advocates, this is wrong. This is 140, but it should be 200, almost 190. But basically, you are now about 190. In this phase, we have now selected about 45 field advocates and 45 online advocates. So many of you are based in capital cities, but the majority of you are based in provinces and across islands in places like the Philippines or Indonesia. It's very important. We also put a very, very strong emphasis on inclusion. So there is more than a third of you that are representing or are part of groups that are generally discriminated against and marginalized, and really putting that emphasis on vulnerable groups was a very big, of very big importance for the UN, because of this principle called leaving no one behind. So this is something that you will hear from us quite a lot. This is one of the spine principle of the 2030 agenda and the SDGs, is really trying to leave no one behind and reaching the ones behind first. So these are principles that you will hear from us quite a lot. The second focus of this Advocates program is about capacity building. There are 16 trainings that are recorded online yourselves in the next few weeks. In September, in August and September, there will be 6 webinars organized on a series of skills that you can use, not only for this program, but also beyond, either in your current or in your future career. The skills we're going to try to build are, for instance, digital impact. This is our colleague from UN SDG Action Campaign, Christina, who will lead 2 webinars on SDG storytelling and how to also maximize your impact on social media. So this will be very valuable for both field and online advocates. And there's a lot of tools, resources, materials, publications, templates, visuals, photos, logos that we will share with you to really facilitate that. Another example of training we provide is the one I lead on partnerships and resource mobilization. It's about how to engage effectively and meaningfully with a range of partners, be it bilateral donors, be it the private sector, be it the government, be it other civil society organizations or other youth groups. The way you engage with different partners varies on who they are and what kind of relationship you have with them. I will also provide in this training some background about how to draft a budget proposal, how to reach out with through partner letters and so on. So these are the examples. Of course, there are the 2 Facebook groups where you can also get a lot of information and build your own capacity. You have now, almost all of you have joined your respective Facebook group. There's one called Field SDG Advocates for My World 2030 and one called Online SDG Advocates for My World 2030. Please take the opportunity in your respective Facebook groups to share as much as you can with your fellow advocates and try to learn from each other. We will make an effort to connect you, creating teams so you can work on an individual basis, but we also really truly encourage you to work as a group, to really build on each other's strength. You will see from the bios we collected, and thank you for doing it in a timely manner, that all of you have very complementary profiles. There are a range of skills and expertise that you already possess as advocates. Some of you are working in conflict-prone regions in Asia Pacific. Others have specialized in SDG 4 and education, are educators. So really you can learn from each other, and the Facebook group is the best way to do that as a start. In previous phases, advocates have created their own WhatsApp or WeChat or Viber or Line groups where they can also exchange. In Cambodia, the 5 advocates in Phnom Penh, for instance, in the past have come together and were meeting on a monthly basis to design and implement their strategy. So this is for field advocates. But you are going to be able to really learn from each other, and I would really strongly encourage you to take advantage of that. There will be the webinars that I just mentioned. There will be the resource packages that will be shared with you, and there are the Facebook groups. And on top of that, we will, on demand when it's needed, organize also regular calls. So with us. So you have at your disposal, please don't abuse it, you have at your disposal though a range of UN experts on communication, on outreach, on partnerships, on SDGs, the technical aspects of SDGs. So there will be an opportunity to also engage with us and learn from us directly. The last bit is about partnerships and sustainability. That is very important. The field advocates are working in the field, in the grassroots, at the grassroots level. They are encouraged to really work with our UN field officers to the extent possible. We will give you more information about how to do that and how we can facilitate it. Of course, with your local government officials, with other NGOs, other youth groups. Many of you already have extensive networks in the field, so you should use them. And we will also give you tips on how to expand them and really expand your reach in general. For online advocates, there are the online partnerships, and we'll also help you identify social media influencers, tell you how to do it, how to design a social media campaign, how to really leverage online partnerships to the fullest. So for both initiatives, really partnerships, online and offline, are very important. And I put here sustainability, but it's really with the having in mind, keeping in mind that it's very important that it just doesn't end with this program. It is about the SDGs and sustainable development, but beyond that, it is about really raising awareness, beyond the program. So after the program ends, we would really love that you continue engaging. And as a matter of fact, from phases 2 and from phases 1 even, we still have a lot of active advocates. So you've seen them on the Facebook groups. They're still there and they're still active, and they're carrying out a lot of SDG advocacy activities, and they're still very active in the program. These are some of the examples that we have about the previous work in phases 1 or 2. They were for field advocates, about 100 events were organized in the past year alone, all across the 10 ASEAN countries. It was only in ASEAN until then. And really, there are lots of advocacy opportunities for the My World program. The first image is actually was given to me by Laura, who has been in New York on a regular basis and is really advocating for our program on the global stage. So this is a picture taken at the SDG Media Zone in New York during the UN January Assembly last year. The second image is from one of our advocates from Bangladesh, where he was based in Singapore, and we facilitated his participation at the Responsible Business Forum last year. The third example is one advocate who went to Rohingya refugee camps and collected offline votes. So really, this is the kind of work that they've been doing. In the top right corner, you see about digital impact. So that's where the online advocates really come in. It's the grassroots work is very important, but also the online presence and the online reach is vital in this day and age with everyone connected. I think the connectivity level for young people, especially in Asia Pacific, is something around 90%. There's almost everyone is on Facebook or some kind of social media platform. So we're using 2 main hashtags, as you've seen in the guidebooks. It's Act for SDGs and My World 2030. And we're working across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and advocates are really encouraged to go on their own platforms. The one I recently learned about was TikTok. So it's been used in China and many other countries in Asia Pacific quite a lot. So they are really, we are encouraging you to be very creative and really trying to reach out beyond just the normal, the regular social media platforms. So your mandate as an online or offline advocate really is to mobilize, engage, and activate your communities, your networks, your organizations, your universities, citizens, people, everyone around you. Really get them to join this big movement on sustainable development. The tagline of the program is creating a movement for sustainable development, one person at a time. And that should be your aim as well. We're not necessarily aiming for quantity, but really quality engagement, trying to get people really motivated and engaged, but not just for the one time they vote and then that's it. We really want people to join this very important movement. And of course, very importantly, as I mentioned in this slide, start taking action for the sustainable development goals, for sustainable development at the local and grassroots level. The guidebooks, all of you have been given the link already. So please refer to your guidebook as much as possible. This is your blueprint for this program. You really need to get a hang of it. Please print it, please put it on your wall. This is all the information you need to know about the program is in there. And when there's something missing, we tend to add it. So yesterday I was adding something about using Zoom and how to use this platform, but it is a living document that we're going to try to update along the way. The dates for the webinars, for instance, were slightly adjusted. So please do refer to this guidebook as much as possible. This and Facebook group. The guidebook and the Facebook group are the two tools, the two go-to places when you have a question or where you need advice. So please really use them. 5 sections. I would encourage you to also look at section 5. The FAQs are very important. That's where you have a lot of questions about what's the survey about, how does it work? How do I get the votes? Why does it matter? Questions about the program. Can I work alone? Can I work in a team? How does this work? There's really a lot of ground covered in the guidebooks, and I would please to encourage you to have a very close look at them. Your deliverables as field and online advocates are quite similar, but a bit distinct. So really wanted to put the emphasis on this difference. For field advocates, it was really the focus that we put is on really trying to leverage community mobilizers and partnership builders. This doesn't mean that online advocates are not also community mobilizers and partnership builders. What it means is that we try to have 2 somewhat separate groups. They have a bit of a separate objectives. Online advocates are all really about their social media enthusiasts. They know how to leverage online partnerships. They know how to mobilize people through social media, and they are really strong online networkers. So the objectives of the deliverables of each group is a bit different. For both of you, it's about collecting My World votes, though I would like to emphasize that the number of votes is not, it's a milestone, and it would be great if you can collect as many votes as possible. But beyond that, you really raise awareness and you advocate for the SDGs. So really creating that momentum in your community, be it online or offline, that's what we're trying to do. Field advocates are expected to also organize at least one local advocacy event with local stakeholders. They will get some guidance on how to do that, and we have a lot of templates from previous phases where advocates have designed their own local advocacy strategy and so on, and we can share these templates with you. Field advocates are also expected to do a bit of online work because, taking all these pictures, you need to document the amazing work you're doing at the grassroots and field levels. So really it's about, writing blogs and taking pictures and documenting and sharing with your Facebook group. And of course, a final report with your overall campaign impact, and we will create an online evaluation survey to collect your inputs to make it easier for you, so you don't have to really, don't feel like it's a drag to write a report. We will help you, provide your final report. For online advocates, designing and disseminating campaign messages and visuals, we have a Trello board. The link is in the guidebook, but we can share it again with you in your Facebook group. The Trello board has a lot of visuals and templates and photos and logos and everything you need to create online visually appealing visuals that you can share on social media. We also will provide you with 2 webinars, I mentioned it earlier, on how to identify online partners, how to identify social media influencers. So really doing some kind of analysis, a mapping of the social media platforms that you have around you. All of you, many of you are already members of Facebook groups, for instance. Some of you have added me as friends on Facebook, and I've seen the networks you're part of. You're already part of some local community group, some SDG-related groups, some youth groups, some student groups. Whatever it is that you're part of already, you need to leverage those groups. And you can also join other groups, really expanding your online networks. And we'll give you some tips on how to do that. Some of you among the online advocates are also journalists. So you are encouraged to write articles, to write blogs, to really use your skills as journalists to tell the story about the SDGs and put really people's face, people's lives, people's stories at the heart of this advocacy work. Some of you have also skills as video makers on YouTube. Some of you have TV shows. A previous advocate from the Philippines, Jules, for instance, has his own TV show called 2030, which is about youth empowerment and the SDGs in general in the Philippines in local language. And the last bit is about monitoring your online presence and your audiences, and helping us to provide a final report, a final tally of the kind of online outreach you did. And you will also be provided with an online evaluation survey form to fill out to help you really do that. I will now turn to briefly present you what UNDP is and does. This should take me about another 5 minutes, and then I will hand the floor to my colleagues from UN SDG Action Campaign. So all of you, I think, are familiar with UNDP, the UN Development Program. It's been created in 1966, so it's been around for quite a while. It's changed and morphed and evolved over time quite a lot. Me personally, I've joined UNDP about 8 years ago. Hani has been there for 10, and Gayan and Laura and Emilia, we've been there for quite a while, and we can all attest on how the UN always changes. The current numbers is that UNDP has over 17,000 people working worldwide. So we have country offices in nearly 170 countries and territories. In Asia Pacific, we have 32, for instance, especially 10 country offices in Pacific countries. So really, it's about promoting sustainable development and guiding and helping, supporting governments. Member states are really our primary counterpart, and helping governments to implement sustainable policies that can help people build a better life. That is really, if you have to summarize it, it's about knowledge, experience, bringing knowledge, experience, and resources to help people build a better life. So about 4.6 billion in development progress. That's I think that the number is about over a 2-year period. So since the last strategic plan, but you can see we are extremely large, 4,500 projects worldwide on a range of issues. UNDP really works on a lot of issues. The three this is the UNDP strategic plan. If you are very curious and you are a development nerd, you can find this document super easily online. You just Google UNDP strategic plan and it comes up. We have 3 main focus. The first one is poverty eradication. The second one is about structural transformation. This can be about government structures or any kind of structures really, and resilience, from resilience to impact from shocks related to climate change or from disasters or from conflict. So the 3 circles you see below are the kind of ways in which we work, which is really trying to create an integrated, multi-sectoral approach to addressing issues related to sustainable development. And these are called the signature solutions. Some of us work on poverty, governance, resilience, environment, energy, gender equality. These are kind of the 6 main ones that we work on. But of course, we work on a lot of things, including mine action and really a lot of other things as well. We have those, so we're headquartered in New York, but we have several regional offices. The one in Bangkok, the Bangkok Regional Hub, is responsible for Asia Pacific. And then we have the country offices. So these are kind of the structure: global, regional, and then national. And we also have a big emphasis on technologies and innovation. This is kind of a cross-cutting, the same way gender equality and women's empowerment is a cross-cutting issue that we focus on. These are the signature solutions. So if you look at the previous slide, the circle on the left-hand side, this is a bit of a detailed what they are. And then on here, you can see what SDGs they really cover. So you can see we work on 17 SDGs. Really, the little dots here on the left-hand side shows that we really, with our signature solutions, try to cover a lot of ground, focusing on all 17 SDGs. There are, of course, other UN agencies that are specialized in specific topics. I can think of SDG 5 and gender equality with UN Women. There's UNESCO, of course, who focuses also on SDG 4, education. There are a lot of UN organizations that have specific mandates. UNDP is the only one really with this cross-cutting mandate, and again, the 6 signature solutions. The Bangkok Regional Hub, I would encourage you to go to this website, https://open.undp.org/projects, and you can enter keywords, search for projects in the toolbar at the bottom, and you can select. see what projects we have in your own country. So you have your 24 countries are covered in this program now. So you can go in your own country and see what kind of work UNDP is doing. This platform is the reason why UNDP actually won an international award about transparency for several years in a row. Everything, all the projects that we have, the money we spend, the donors, the partners, and the focus, the project documents, and all the technical aspects of the work are available online. And if you are a bit interested about development programs and what they look like, I would encourage you to go onto this platform. You can find us on social media. This is in your guidebook, I believe, and in the social media package that we're going to share with everybody. But these are our website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. And this is it for me today. I will hand over to Laura, if you can take the floor.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nadine. Can everybody hear me okay? I think so. It was working well before. Okay, so my name is Laura Hildebrandt. I'm the head of global outreach for the UN SDG Action Campaign. And first, before I jump into my presentation, I just want to say a very warm welcome to all of you. I haven't been very involved in the selection process, but after I saw all of the candidates come in, I had a look at some of your profiles, and I really can't tell you how inspired and grateful we are to all of you for applying and for signing up for this program. It's really exciting to have all of you come together, representing so many countries across the region. And we have seen over the last couple of years of the program that it's just built the most amazing community of SDG action, and it's been such a contribution to our efforts as a team. And I also, before I go any further, I have to tell you that the team in Bangkok and Nadine herself has been such an incredible leader for this program. And I think that you can see that from her presentation. She just has this tremendous passion for this program and for helping all of you to reach your greatest capacity in reaching out about the SDGs, but also as individuals to grow through this program. And so I want to say a huge thank you to Nadine for her hard work in putting all this together. I'm here on this call today with my colleague Guyan, who's our digital strategy specialist. And together we are part of the team who are delivering on the programs, which I will now introduce you to. Here you can see a few of our campaign websites and tools. The overall campaign is sdgactioncampaign.org. We also have active Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts for sure. You can follow us at SDG Action, and also the hashtag that Nadine just mentioned, which is Act for SDGs. If we go to the next slide, I'll start to introduce you to the different programs that we're offering. Can you still see? Oh, Nadine's screen is not showing anymore. Do you want me to show from my side? Sorry, I just want to make sure that you can. Okay, great, thank you. So I'll introduce you very briefly, because there's a lot of information on this call, to a few of the initiatives that we lead here in Bonn. So the SDG Action Campaign is based in Bonn, in Germany, and we're a global program which aims to inspire, connect, and mobilize communities across the world to take action for the SDGs. We call it the global movement of action for the SDGs. And we do this through a number of different programs. One of them is an annual festival of action. This is the moment where this amazing community that we try to nurture throughout the year through the different programs come together. They come together in Bonn, and our goal is to inspire everybody and give them opportunities to learn from each other in the different ways that they're taking action. And here our themes are mostly related to SDG storytelling, SDG campaigning, data collection, a lot of the different tools and programs that you'll be involved in throughout your time with the My World Advocates. And so this festival happens, as I said, on an annual basis. Next year in 2020, it will happen the first week of April. We would love to have some of you to attend that festival because you're exactly the kind of people who are the target audience for this community. Here you'll meet other people like yourselves, young people who are actively engaging on delivering on the SDG agenda, but you'll also meet people from the creative sector, people from journalist sector, governments, UN, a whole mix of people who are contributing to the agenda. And you can see some of the highlights from last year. If we go to the next slide, I'll tell you one of the core programs that we offer through that festival, or that reaches its culmination at that festival, is the SDG Action Awards. Is it Nadine? Yes, Nadine, can you go to the next slide, please? The SDG Action Awards are an annual program as well. We put out an open call to everybody, to all sectors, to compete for these awards. And the awards are in the categories of Best Mobilizer. That's people like you in many cases who are out there getting your communities activated for the SDGs. Storytellers, this might be usually journalists or people who really capture the human interest and connect it with important global issues like the SDGs. Campaigners, visualizers, which is usually with respect to SDG data, such as that which is collected through the My World Survey, so there are opportunities there. Connectors, people who connect across different sectors of society. Includers are the people who are making tremendous efforts to reach people who are normally furthest behind. And we added a new category last year for creatives, looking at how the artist sector, artists in the world are really capturing people's hearts and imagination to help them connect with issues that are sometimes considered kind of far away from their daily lives. And so this awards program, as I said, is open to all sectors, but the UN and national governments are not entitled to win the award because really we're targeting other sectors who are making a difference in their world through these different categories. And something exciting for all of you to know is that last year, the People's Choice Award was awarded to Jules, who Nadine just mentioned, who was one of the ASEAN advocates through this program. So the cohort, all of you here, are really very good candidates for these awards. And maybe through the actions that you've already done, or when you start thinking about what kind of action you will pursue over the next few months, you might want to be inspired by looking at the SDG Action Awards website, and that's sdgactionawards.org, for ideas for what you can do. And really that's one of the reasons why we run this program. One is to reward people like you for the tremendous efforts that you're taking, and two, it's to give those great ideas and innovations to other people who are looking for what they can do to make a difference. Next slide, please. And here you'll see another program which we're really just launching this year, and this is the SDG Wings. This, as you can see, is an augmented reality campaign to leverage technology so that people can express to their communities, both online and offline, the SDGs that they care most about. And the tagline here is, which of the SDGs would you like to start a butterfly effect for? The concept being that each of us has the capacity to start changing the world with our actions. And we are asking our communities to identify a goal that they care about enough that they think that they can make a difference for that goal. And what you see here are the different ways that the campaign is used. It's introduced in bus stops or public locations, but then it's also very much a tool which can be brought to festivals, to live events and conferences, where you can capture people's commitments and their interest in making a difference. I think there's a lot of more detail which can be provided to this, and I think maybe we should offer this campaign to all of you and ask Christina, when she does one of her seminars coming up with you to give you more detail about this campaign. It's a very exciting campaign, which is getting a lot of interest around the world. Next slide, please. And I don't need to tell you much more about My World Survey. Nadine gave a brilliant introduction already. And the My World Survey is, of course, one of the reasons we're all here together on this call. I think I will just add to you with the part that we do with the My World Survey at the end of all of your hard work to collect the data from your communities is to make sure that that data is seen at different levels. When we go and bring it to conferences, it's presented, of course, regionally by mostly by the Bangkok team. And that's our commitment to you. You do the hard work of gathering the data, and on our side, we try to support you with the tools to make that work very well, and then also to make sure that the data has an impact. And we'll get much more in depth into that soon. So let's go to the next slide. Now I've left this one to the end of my presentation, the Global Week to Act for SDGs. This is an annual mobilization where this is our biggest call to action. We ask everybody across the world to get involved. We know that around the 25th of September, which is the anniversary of the adoption of the goals, all of the world leaders gather again in New York and they make their statements to the General Assembly. We know that this is a very important moment to show them that although the focus is on New York, everybody across the world knows about the SDGs and is involved in taking action on the SDGs. We think and have shown that this is a very powerful way to remind leaders that SDG action is demanded by the community and that we stand behind them in implementing these goals. What you see here is the map of last year's action and the summary. Last year we had about 1 million people who participated in activities in over 1,200 cities in 142 countries. Most of those activities were conferences or events. Some of them were online, Twitter chats, and we're just going into that period of mobilization right now. So this year, instead of a single day, which has been for the last 2 years, we're expanding to a global week of action, actually starting on September 20th and running all the way to the 30th of September, so that people like you can organize your events more flexibly during that period and taking advantage of the weekends, for instance, and also linking the actions that you might take to key moments in the agenda. For instance, September 21st is the International Day of Peace. If you're involved in peace-related activities, you might do something on that day. The 25th itself is the anniversary of the goals. So that's a big moment to take action for the goals. Now, I could go on for a long time about all of this. We're just about to launch the call to action, so we'll give you more information about this mobilization. You can learn more at actforsdgs.org. And one of the things that we'd like to do to get you started is start mapping yourselves as a community within this platform for action. And that's what I'll tell you about in the next slide. So here you can see already in the Act for SDGs platform, you can see the image of the profile page for this program, the My World Asia Pacific 2030 Advocates Program. And there we have a brief description of what we're collectively trying to achieve under that program. And I'd like to invite each of you to register in the platform on this page. So you can see, or perhaps you can't see it very clearly, but if you visit the page, you can see that there's a button to add your organization under this partner. And there you can create a profile and register yourselves. And I think that one of you in the Philippines has already done this, so that we can start to identify you as a community within this global platform of action. I know that you already have Facebook groups. This is basically a complement to the Facebook group, so that when we go and show this global map to heads of state, but also throughout the year to UN agencies, to governments, about the action that's happening in their country, they can see each of you and some of the contributions that you're making. And so by creating a profile already in this page, we'll get you started to start sharing and mapping your contribution to the SDGs there. I can give you more information about that later. I think I'll stop there for now, but please do go ahead and explore actforsdgs.org and start thinking about how and whether you will be able to contribute to that. I know it comes very early in your work as advocates, but I think some of you are already quite active and will be ready to sign up for actions. And I think with that, that's where I will end for today, and we really look forward to the subsequent webinars where we can get more in depth on some of these programs and initiatives. So I just want to say thank you to all of you again for joining us, and I will hand over to my colleagues from UNB.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to try to get Emilia and Jessica online. I stopped sharing my screen, so I'm hoping we can unmute them easily. It's not that easy to do, but here we go. Hang on.
Okay, so we do that.
Yes, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, finally.
Welcome, Emilia. Over to you. Welcome.
Yes, hi. Hi, Laura, Nadine, Gayan, and all the advocates. It's a pleasure for me to be here. First of all, because I work for the United Nations Volunteers Program, and I know that many of you are volunteers in what you do, and with this program in particular, but also because I started my journey that led to the UN as a volunteer myself. So I did have a very similar network or a very similar initiative to the initiatives that you guys have. I had the youth network on MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, for those if you would remember, in my own country. So really pleased to be here and welcome you all. Unfortunately,
the slide that didn't load.
Okay, unfortunately, my colleague Jessica, who's a volunteer from Korea, and she works with me, she was the one involved in the selection of you guys. So she was part of the selection, so she would know you from names. She had to go to another call with our headquarters, so she was here, but she might come back perhaps before we finish. Okay,
Nadine will help us to share.
Okay, so we are waiting for the slides. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, this is okay. Next one. So I will start. I really like to actually start. I always, when I do presentations, I try to raise awareness about what volunteerism is and what volunteerism is not, because it is in our mandate, and the purpose of why UNV as a program was created is to promote the proper use of volunteerism. So I usually like to have a quiz and a guess, and people will raise hands, but I don't think it's possible this time. Maybe for my next webinar, I will try to engage more interactively with you. But anyway, just there are a few components to what volunteerism is. It's an activity that is done from the free will and for the general public good, and where monetary reward is not of the principal motivating factor. This is a universal definition that is adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2002. So it is an agreed terminology by all the UN member states. So this is also for you, I think, as a reference to use when you engage in volunteers in your initiatives. So you could also take this in mind, and I'm sure many of you are also subscribe under this definition, as you guys are volunteers. So the next one, Nadine. So what, just briefly on what is United Nations Volunteers. So we have two purposes of the program. It's to promote volunteerism worldwide. So we work, ASEAN My World is one of such initiatives to promote volunteerism. We have other initiatives and projects where we work with some governments, also to help set up some volunteer schemes, or what we call volunteer infrastructure, so where volunteerism can really be seen as a way to reach development goals. So I will talk to you more on some of these initiatives in our next call, next webinar on 27. So I hope all of you can attend. And our second goal is to mobilize volunteers. So we have a lot of volunteers that UNV mobilizes for the whole UN, and this is our mandate in the projects and programs. So Nadine has mentioned that, for example, UNDP has many thousands of projects. So a lot of the UN volunteers, what we call, would serve within these programs and projects. So Suki, who is also here next to me, and Jessica, these are also two of our UN volunteers that are part of the UN system. These are people that bring various skills to the work of the UN. And we have around 7,000 of such UN volunteers deployed in the countries. I come from Bangkok regional office. My position is a program analyst, but it doesn't say anything to people probably outside of the UN. So I do get involved in a lot of initiatives where we actually promote volunteerism and work to advance volunteerism for peace and development in the region of Asia and the Pacific. So I travel also quite often to your countries as well, and know what is happening more or less. The next one. So why, when we talk about volunteerism, we would like to say we are very neutral to all of the SDGs, and we are volunteerism is part of, and volunteers are part of all, or the achievement or the implementation of all the sustainable development goals. And on the slide, these are just a few sort of ideas or a few ways of how, from the experience that we have, volunteers are helping to achieve SDGs. So volunteers are official stakeholder group in the SDG, in the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is just sort of a point for you to keep in mind, because many of your countries will have different frameworks or different processes that will be going on. For example, the voluntary national reviews or etc., or coming up with the national development frameworks where volunteers should be part and the voice of volunteers should be heard, because often these are the people that really implement or go to the last mile to really model behaviors or collect data or raise people's awareness. And ASEAN My World is another, you could say, is a program where it's run by volunteers, by all of you. So the next slide. Okay, so also just I included here the slide of from our stance of why youth volunteering is important for achievement of SDGs. It is because the urbanization is happening in a lot of countries in Asia, and a lot of countries in this region are also have quite a big youth populations, and we hope that this power of young people like you could be really harnessed for the development or for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. There are also more, I'm not sure how familiar you are with all the Sustainable Development Goals and targets, but there are 20 youth-specific targets in the Sustainable Development Goals, and I've listed, so you might be curious perhaps to go and look. I have to remind myself of them. I have a cheat book on my desk to say, to tell you the truth, to look at them to remind myself every time I work on something. So the challenge of the Sustainable Development Goals or Sustainable Development Agenda is also in tracking progress in a lot of this, and I really sincerely believe that these are the people and the volunteers or the citizens that can really help bring this agenda on track, and it's not only something that the governments can do. So the next slide, Nadine. Also, some more understanding of where volunteerism fits is from the larger SDG framework, is that the traditional means of implementation, or I mentioned, for example, to say that it's a government's obligation or responsibility to achieve the SDGs, or, you know, to ensure that they are achieved, is no longer enough. So participatory mechanism, citizen engagement and volunteering is part of that, and a people-centered approach is very much part of this agenda. Next slide. I don't want to take a lot of time. I know we are a bit late already. As one of the stories that I would like to share with you is a story from our volunteer. She's a national volunteer from Pakistan. She is placed within the UNDP project on elections, and I think there are advocates from Pakistan as well. But just to give a little bit of a background on, so if you picture a young woman in Pakistan trying to raise awareness on elections, she is one of the 40 current cohort of these volunteers that work in the communities, and they go in very, very rural local villages, and you will see on the picture she is talking to a group of men, and in the context of Pakistan, it is not very easy to for a young woman to talk like this about the elections and about the rights of she's actually advocating for rights of women and girls to be part of the elections. So the full story you can actually read on the unv.org website, but she actually had one of the villagers, after one of the sessions that she had with the community of shepherds, he came to her and he said that now he is actually convinced after her interaction with them that he will send her his daughter with who has a disability. He will send her actually to school because he really wants her to be as you know, as he thought, as smart and powerful as Fatima is. So this is just Fatima and Anissa. These are two. This is just one of the stories. I will have more stories for you when I will do my webinar next week, where we will go into details of what and how volunteers are being the change to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and how at the global level we are trying to actually now collect more evidence on this and make sure that policymakers can really look at volunteerism as a solution to accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I think that was the last slide, correct, Nadine? Yes, and yes, if you have any questions, I guess this is for all of us, but yes, happy to connect with you. Thank you.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Emilia, for this amazing presentation, and Laura before you. It was very detailed and very clear, and everyone, I'm sure, has burning questions. We are perfectly on time. We have another 10 minutes. for everyone, if you have any questions about UNDP, UN SDG Action Campaign, UNV, about the role of these organizations, their mandate, please take this opportunity to really ask us questions. Anything related to the survey, there will be a webinar next week about it. More details about volunteerism and youth empowerment, there will be a webinar about it. So please take this time to ask questions about the mandate and the role of these organizations. You can raise your hand. I think that's how it works in the group chat. I am scrolling down the comments box and I don't see any questions. Yes, thank you, Laura, for this comment about trying to take this opportunity to make everyone grow and be inspired and use the tools and take action on the SDGs. That's our motto. Anything else? Please raise your hand. Take this opportunity to, you know, it's the only time you're going to get the three organizations in the same webinar at the same time. So please take advantage.
So Nabina, I'm going to unmute people in the order it comes up in my screen. So I'm going to unmute Robin now. Robin, it's your turn. Robin, you're unmuted. Okay, we'll go to someone else and come back to Robin. Anyone else want to ask their questions? Please raise their hand.
I see a question from Bikash, actually. Can online advocates be part of field advocacy and spread it through digital media? Thank you for this very good question. Actually, the answer is unfortunately no. I mean, of course, you can do your own field advocacy, but not part of the program. The online advocates are actually selected through the online, the UNV online volunteering.org platform, and there are very strict rules about the fact that your advocacy and your work with us can only and strictly be online. In the guidebook for online volunteers, I think I may have put that sentence about 5 times throughout the guidebook. So Bikash, unfortunately, the answer is no. I mean, you can, not for the program. Everything you do outside of the program, you should, and you're highly encouraged to do it, but not within the framework of the program. Thank you for that question. I see another question. Gayan, can I answer it from P. Parimita Barik about the challenges that previous online advocates have been facing in similar programs? Thank you for this excellent question again. This is exactly why we've selected you, because of your critical minds. We actually have at hand 2 full evaluations that we've done of phase 1 and phase 2 of the program. So I mentioned in my presentation about this final evaluation survey. So it's like these online surveys, both for field and for online advocates, to collect information about you, and big aspects of the survey are about those challenges. So we've been really putting a massive effort on tracking what's going well and that's what's not going well. And there is a section in the evaluation about those challenges. So some examples were, for instance, for field advocates, the challenges included what are the proper ways to really engage government officials and be taken seriously? That is one thing that the field advocates were saying throughout. Some SDG advocates were able to really reach out because they had gained trust and they had built this relationship over a long time, and they had earned the respect and the legitimacy from those government officials. But this is built over time. And the letters that we provided you with, so when you came on board, we gave you this letter of appointment for field advocates. You can use that and go to your government official, which will show that you have been endorsed by the UN. You have been handpicked. I didn't mention before, but there were almost 700 applicants and only 45 selected among you. So it's really was extremely competitive. So we have reviewed and spoke to you for interviews for field advocates, and this letter you can use and go talk to your government officials. So this is one example. For online advocates, an example of challenge that they faced was really understanding how to identify social media influencers or networks and groups online that they could reach out to. So they didn't really understand the features of Facebook. If you know how to use those social media platforms, you can see there's a lot of keywords you can use very simply just by checking in the group feature, looking for SDGs, looking for youth, and also looking, I didn't mention before, but in your local languages, because beyond just Facebook, there's a lot of WhatsApp groups and other means, other platforms that exist where you can actually really identify people you can reach out to and maximize your digital impact. So these are two examples, one for field and one for advocate. And I will share with you in your respective Facebook groups the evaluation survey from the previous phases. So you can read up. It's only, I think, 10 pages for the first one and 12 pages for the second evaluation report. So you can read it. It's quite digestible and quite easy to understand. You will have an overview of the impact that advocates have achieved and some of the challenges that they mentioned. Gayan, should I just go ahead and continue with the questions I see in the chat?
Yes, please, Nadine.
Can field advocates work with the local government in their respective country? Yes, you are encouraged to do so, and there will be a webinar on partnerships and how to do it. So I will keep it at that right now, but the answer is yes. You are highly encouraged to engage all stakeholders in your advocacy efforts. It's very important because not one stakeholder can achieve the SDGs alone. That's the main point of my world survey and really trying to engage everyone. The UN cannot achieve the SDGs alone. We need the partnerships from the government, from the bilateral donors, from the private sector, from civil society, youth groups, volunteers, citizens, people. Everyone needs to be involved, including local governments. Nir, I see your message about being a visually impaired person. And you hope you will get the documents and references in accessible format. And the answer is yes. If there's any of the documents we share that you cannot read with your software, most of them are either online or in PDF, but we will make available to you in Word format. So hopefully Word should be fine. I certainly think so. So everything can be made available to you in Word format, and we will make our utmost effort to really make sure that you can get access to everything.
Nadine, there was one question I think we missed. Someone is asking, is every individual advocate is supposed to act on a specific SDG or all?
Thank you for that question. That's also an excellent question. So it is up to you. So that's the beauty of this program, I think, is the creativity and the freedom you have. Some of you are specifically working on SDG 4 education. Some of you are specifically working on SDG 16. You can pick what you work on. Some of you actually work on all of 17 SDGs. I can think of some of the participants, the advocates who are from the 2030 Youth Force, this other network that UNDP and UV work with. They have this mandate to work on all and promote all SDGs. So really, it is up to each advocate to design their own messages. Each SDG is equally important. They are all interrelated and interlinked. So if your focus is on SDG 1, poverty, and SDG 5, gender equality, that's great. We selected you to have a variety of topics covered. Some of you work on energy, infrastructure, peace. So really focus on, we're not asking you to reinvent the wheel, or you do what you're already doing, and we're going to try to capacitate you, provide you with the skills to do it maybe a little bit better. Hopefully our webinars will do that. So don't work on something that you're not passionate about. We're only asking you, keep learning, learn more about the SDGs, use the webinars, use the Facebook group to learn more, and really that's how you should do it. Does anyone, Emilia or Laura, you're more than welcome, Gayan, to add if I don't answer the questions adequately. So I got a question actually for Gayan. It's a question for you from Robin. I am working on developing a mobile app, more like a game to make people aware of the SDGs. what sort of support can I expect from the UN SDG Action Campaign in that venture?
Well, the support can come in at different levels. If mainly giving you access to our network, so you can find people who can help you, and also giving visibility to whatever you do. Laura mentioned about the awards program. If you do this, you can submit an application for the awards program. So there are a couple of ways we can give you visibility, and also you can get access to our partner network.
Thanks, Gaia. Let me add that we have developed, based on the work from the advocates, we have compiled an SDG advocacy toolkit where you have a list of a lot of initiatives, and there's a chapter on SDG mobile apps. So we can share that with you, so you can get maybe some templates, examples of what are the SDG apps out there that exist. What features do they have? How do they work? Some of them are available on Google Play or on iTunes, so you'll be able to download it on your phone and check it out for yourself. Myself, I'm not a IT or platform specialist, so I will not be able to guide you or advise you on how to do it, but we can share a lot of information, publications, resources on what to put, at least in the app. So that's my answer. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Nadine. There are a couple of questions about branding. I think what we can say is there is a webinar coming up on particularly about how to use multimedia and branding from our colleague Tina. So we will note those questions, and I will specifically ask Tina to address some of those questions: how to use the logos, what type of messages to use. So all of those questions will be addressed at that webinar.
Thank you, Gayan. Let me add that in the guidebook, in the FAQs, so the last fifth section of your respective guidebooks, there's a few questions about the use of the logo. So as a baseline, the My Word logo can be used on any of your online and offline advocacy efforts. As a My Word 2030 advocate, the My Word logo is yours, and you can use it in any and every effort you're using. For the use of the UN organization's logo, it is way more sensitive. As I mentioned in the guidebook, you need to make a request weeks in advance so we can actually check with our country offices. So this is, we are very large organizations, and while your work would be supported to a certain extent by our field offices, our national offices, we need to get their prior consent. And you will see, depending on the country, the engagement will differ. We'll get to that in a separate webinar, but basically that's it. My World logo can be used anytime, every time, on any product online or offline that you develop. And for the UN logos, you will need prior consent, and you will need to send us a request at least 3 weeks in advance. So it's a bit, the UN logo is a very sensitive one. I can see a question from Parimita from again. So you are saying that you are an editorial photographer. Would you like us to contribute visual, like pictorial message? Gayan, do you know what a pictorial message is? I guess this is a question for Christina, and maybe the webinars on digital marketing and maximizing your social impact.
Yes, so they can use pictorial messages, but again, Tina will go into details on this one in her webinar.
So keep this question down somewhere on a paper, and remember to ask it again to Christina. I'm sure she will be able to tell you everything you need about it. She's really an expert in this topic.
Also, Nadine, is it okay if some of these questions can be asked on the Facebook group as well, so we can answer to everyone?
Of course. So, the Facebook group is really the one place. Actually, the next question is about, is there any dedicated space where we can have access or read the experiences of previous SDG field advocates? Yes, the Facebook group. You will see members of the group include advocates from the first and second phases. So both for the online advocates and the field advocates, the previous advocates are already in your Facebook group. So you will get the list. I will share a list so you can see who's who, and you'll be more than welcome to reach out to other advocates. But the answer is yes, there is a space. That's the Facebook groups. What intervention orientation about SDGs can we have to target people to answer the survey? Especially the ones who have zero knowledge about the SDGs. So here we have a whole section of the guidebooks about this, where you will find information about My World Survey, about the SDGs, and the compendium of tools that I mentioned also includes a lot of very specific tools that you can use either for students, if you're working with young people, school children, students at university, and the public at large. So we compiled about 60 tools that are meant for this specific purpose, to really raise awareness and reach out, including to the general public. So for people who don't have zero knowledge about the SDGs. So again, the compendium, I will share it this afternoon in the Facebook groups, so you can check it out. It was made available on this platform called Airtable, so it's quite visually appealing. So you can click and you can filter, you can download it. And there's of course also a PDF, and for others also a Word version of it, where you can have a look at those specific tools to educate and to raise awareness on the SDGs. I can see there's another question. Should I go ahead from Sheen about coming up with your own social media strategy? Can our team per country connect with each other and come up with a whole strategy? Is it enough? But I know I will be evaluated through individual work. Thank you for your clarification. So this is the flexibility and the creativity I mentioned about the program. You can either work on your individual capacity with your own networks and your own organizations, or you can join efforts with other advocates. This will be, Sheen, entirely up to you how you want to proceed. You might find some advocates in your city, especially if you're in the capital city. Sometimes there's at least one other advocate, or some advocates are located in provinces and they will be based in the same city. Of course, through online means, you can collaborate quite easily with WhatsApp and Line and Vibe and so on. So basically, it's up to you. You will be assessed on your individual capacity. So the assessment will be based on the number of votes, though I emphasize this is not the main criteria, but it's your overall engagement. How much did you share with your fellow advocates in the Facebook group? Were you reactive in the webinars? Did you engage? And believe it or not, it's quite easy to see who among the advocates is active or not. It's actually clear as water. It's very easy to tell who is active or not. And you have your deliverables that I mentioned in your letter of agreement, so you can refer to those. But do not worry that it's not completely and entirely strict. So you will be assessed on an individual basis, but it's more about your overall proactiveness, your enthusiasm, how much you share and how much you engage with us. And again, I think it will be quite easy to tell who's active or not.
Thank you, Nadine. My colleagues pointed out that we missed one question, which is what is the difference between My World 2030 Asia Pacific Advocates and the SDG Advocates?
Thank you, Gayan. Thank you for noticing that. It's hard to check the comments, speak, and check my Skype at the same time. So the My World 2030 Asia Pacific Advocacy Program is the overall program. And in this program, you have two advocates program. On one hand, you have the field advocates, and on the other hand, the online advocates. As I spent time already explaining this in a specific slide, I will share the presentation we prepared for you, and I will highlight which slide you should look at. If I remember correctly, it's my 7th slide. So the exact differences between the two programs are highlighted and explained in this slide. But just in a nutshell, both of them have the same mandate to engage, mobilize their networks. The field advocates have a bigger emphasis on doing grassroots and field works with person-to-person partnerships. And the online advocates are limited and restricted to online advocacy because you were selected through the UN online volunteering.org platform. And there are very strict guidelines about the fact that you can only and strictly do online activities. The reason why you are in this joint call today is because we didn't really want to separate you, because you have the same mandate and you can reinforce each other in your advocacy work. In the previous phases, the webinars for online and field advocates were separate, But in this time, we decided to have you together because we really think you can build on each other's strengths to really create an impact.
Thank you, Nadine. I guess there's another question maybe to Laura. Laura, one of the advocates asking just a question on jurisdiction of our advocacy. Can I host programs outside Fiji during the Global Week of Action? I will be in Miami, Florida during the week and would love to host an event there. However, I will be hosting an event remotely for my local organization. Do you like to take that question, Laura? You're on mute. Let me try if I can unmute you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Josiah, for the question. I think absolutely, please do go ahead if you're in Miami that week and host an event there. I think just in terms of making it make sense within the Act for SDGs platform, maybe it's best if you post that action from your personal profile as an organization as yourself, if that makes sense. If you go into the platform and add yourself directly under the register button, then you can host an event in Miami there. Otherwise, it's really just for the optics of it. Otherwise, it looks like our Asia Pacific advocates are hosting in Florida. I mean, from my perspective, it's not a problem. But I think it might be nice if we look at the map, because on that page for the advocates, you'll see the global map or the regional map of all the actions that the advocates are putting on. And if you post for Florida, it's going to expand the scope of the map and maybe create confusion. I don't know if Nadine wants to add to that, but you know, from our perspective, there's not in any way a problem with you putting on an event in Miami.
Thank you, Laura. And my colleagues also pointed out that I missed another question, which is, are there any specific guidelines and mandates for collaboration with the youth networks in our respective countries? Nadine, do you want to take that question? You are on mute, I think. Let me try to unmute you.
Thank you. Yes, specific mandates to engage with youth networks. Well, this is a similar question to the one from Sheen earlier. It's really about, you can reach out to as many networks as you can. Of course, as a youth advocate yourself, engaging with youth networks will be your first target. There will be some guidance on how to do a stakeholder mapping. This is a tool used by development practitioners to really identify who among the people you know in your networks you can use basic frameworks to really understand their strengths and weaknesses. And youth networks have a very similar objective than you, and especially youth networks working on SDGs. In all of your countries, I can guarantee you that there's already at least one major youth network working on the SDGs, and you should reach out to them. I mentioned one specific network earlier, and many of you are part of it, is the 2030 Youth Force. So this is a regional network managed by UNDP and UNV, and they have a presence in many countries, for instance, in China, India, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Philippines and Indonesia, the ones that I can remember, but I think 7 countries in total. So reaching out in your respective countries to the 2030 Youth Force would be a very good start. Some of you are part of ISAC, so I'm sure everyone here knows what ISAC is. It's a global, the largest global organization working on youth empowerment. If you are working in ISAC, you already have partners that you're working with, and you can use and leverage these connections that you have through this network. One of the big players in Asia Pacific for youth engagement is this other organization called JCI, Junior Chamber International. Some of you advocates are part of JCI. We had one from Malaysia, if I remember correctly. And so really we encourage you, when you're part of those networks, to really use the partnerships that you can build through these networks and reach out to them, identify them, and work with as many people as possible. Because you will see in any advocacy and engagement that you do, strategy that you have, not everything will work. You will reach out to 100 people, maybe only 10 will reply to you. So you really need to be respectful, persistent, build trust over time, and show your added value. And your added value is basically your own expertise, your own skills, and your own networks. And that's through the webinars, the capacity that we're going to enable is that you're going to show that to your partners. And it's through these networks and through this work that you're doing with the partners that you will be able to really maximize your impact. So yes, youth networks is your primary target, but we would encourage you not to limit yourself to young people only. I see a question from Mark Jacinto. Hi, Mark. Philippines, if I remember correctly. Are we going to be able to connect with the UNDP country offices? If yes, how? And we'll be glad if you can connect with them as they will be able to help us. So I mentioned this a bit earlier in the webinar. There will be an opportunity to connect with UNDP offices, but it will be on a case-by-case basis. If you are an advocate and you have your strategy ready, and sometimes you already are part of this massive SDG advocacy networks. In the case of Mark, if I remember, you are part of the 2030 Youth Force Philippines. So you already have lots of networks. And you are fortunate that UNDP Philippines is a big, big supporter of SDGs and youth engagement. And they have worked with the advocates in the past. This depends on each country. It's on a case-by-case basis. And wherever possible, we will facilitate this connection. And sometimes, unfortunately, they won't be that responsive because they have other priorities. But to the extent possible, yes, the facilitation will be done through Hani and myself and Suki, so the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub, and we will make that connection. I see another question about, I think we maybe need to start taking the last 3 questions. Is that okay for everyone? Because we are now well over time. Gayan, I don't know what's your opinion about this.
Yes,
it's already...
let's wrap up with the last couple of questions maybe, and then ask people to keep on sending their questions through the Facebook group so we can answer.
Great, yeah, let's do that. So the 6 to 8 hours per week required, this is something I mentioned to many of you for the field advocates during the interview. It is up to you. Some of you have priorities because you are students and you have exams coming up. Some of you work already and you have a lot of work at a certain period of time. So your engagement will fluctuate. None of us have the capacity to check on you, how many hours you spend online, how much you do work. This is a volunteer unpaid program. And so the more work you're willing to put into this, the more grateful we are. What we provide to you is a platform for sharing. We're trying to build your capacity, facilitate connections with partners, but you are volunteering your free time. So we really value your time, and we will understand if you cannot spend 24 hours a day doing this. So really the engagement level is up to you, whatever you are comfortable with. In certain cases, we will encourage you to do a bit more. In other cases, we'll never encourage you to do less. But this is really up to you. It can fluctuate also. It doesn't have to be a standard 6 hours. It could be 1 week will be 4 hours, participation to the webinar and going to the Facebook group. Another week, it will be designing your online campaign strategy, which will require several hours of effort. So really, it will fluctuate, and it will be entirely up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. And the more you're willing to do, the more appreciated it will be on our end, and the more impact you will create.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Before you wrap up, just to remind everyone, the recording of this will be made available through maybe YouTube or Facebook, and also the material will be made available as well. Nadine, over to you to wrap up.
Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. I see we had a steady 40 participants. And of course, thank you so much for our UN co-conveners to take the time to make this call incredibly useful and informative. So I hope everyone was paying close attention. We will share, as Gayan said. So thank you, Gayan. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, Suki, so much. If Hani is still here, thank you, Hani, for supporting this program. And congratulations, everyone, on being selected. And we are very, very much looking forward to engaging with you in the next few months. So keep up the good work. And know that on our side, you have very motivated and very supportive people. So thank you again for everyone for coming today, and have a wonderful evening or day, wherever you are.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.